What if I told you that your bank account could be frozen tomorrow? Not because you've done anything wrong, but simply because you didn't know about a new regulation that targets people over 60 and green card holders. Right now, thousands of Americans and permanent residents are at risk of losing access to their own money, facing unexpected account closures, and dealing with financial chaos that could have been easily prevented. The banking landscape in the United States is changing dramatically in 2026, and if you're over 60 or hold a green card, you need to know exactly what's coming. The question is, are you prepared or are you about to be caught off guard? Welcome to US Visa Info, your trusted source for everything related to immigration, visas, and navigating life in the United States. Today we're tackling a critical issue that's flying under the radar, but could have massive implications for millions of people across this country. We're talking about the new 2026 bank regulations that specifically impact individuals over 60 years old and green card holders. These aren't minor policy tweaks. These are substantial changes to how financial institutions verify identity, monitor transactions, and comply with federal requirements. Whether you're a senior citizen who's been banking at the same institution for decades, or you're a green card holder building your life in America, you need to understand these changes right now. Stay with us through to the end because we're going to break down exactly what these regulations are, why they're being implemented, who's most at risk, and most importantly, what you need to do immediately to protect yourself and your finances. Let's start by understanding what's actually happening. The new regulations coming into effect throughout 2026 are part of a broader effort by federal authorities to combat money laundering, terrorism financing, and financial fraud. These goals are legitimate and important. Nobody wants criminals using the banking system to move illegal money. However, the implementation of these regulations is creating significant challenges for law-abiding citizens, particularly those in two vulnerable groups, people over 60 and green card holders. The regulations require banks to implement enhanced due diligence procedures, which means more paperwork, more verification, and more scrutiny of certain accounts. So, why are people over 60 being targeted? It's not that the government suspects seniors of criminal activity. Rather, it's because seniors are statistically the most common victims of financial fraud and scams. Elderly Americans lose billions of dollars every year to various scams, from romance fraudsters to fake IRS calls to grandparent scams. The new regulations require banks to implement additional monitoring on accounts held by individuals over 60 to detect unusual activity patterns that might indicate someone is being scammed. On the surface, this sounds protective. The problem is how it's being implemented. Many seniors are finding their legitimate transactions flagged, their accounts temporarily frozen while investigations occur, and their banking relationships complicated by constant verification requests. For green card holders, the situation is different, but equally concerning. The regulations require banks to maintain more detailed records on non-citizen account holders and to verify immigration status more frequently. This is tied to broader concerns about ensuring that people in the United States on temporary or conditional status are properly monitored. Green card holders, even though you're lawful permanent residents with the right to live and work in America indefinitely, are being caught up in these enhanced scrutiny measures. Banks are now required to verify that your green card is current, that your address matches their records, and in some cases, that you're maintaining your residency requirements. Here's what this means in practical terms. If you're over 60, your bank may start asking you additional questions when you make large withdrawals or transfers. They might call you to verify that you actually authorize certain transactions. In some cases, they might temporarily hold or delay transfers while they complete their verification process. This can be frustrating, especially if you're trying to pay for something time-sensitive, like medical care or home repairs. Some seniors have reported being locked out of their online banking and having to go into a branch in person to verify their identity, which can be difficult for those with mobility issues or who live in rural areas far from the nearest branch. For green card holders, you might receive letters from your bank asking you to provide updated documentation. This could include a copy of your current green card, proof of your residential address, and in some cases, additional identification documents. If you don't respond to these requests within the time frame specified, usually 30 to 60 days, your bank has the authority to restrict or even close your account. This is particularly problematic for green card holders who travel frequently for work or to visit family abroad. If you're out of the country, when your bank sends a verification request, you might not receive it in time to respond. Let's talk about the specific triggers that are causing accounts to be flagged under these new regulations. For seniors, large cash withdrawals are a major red flag. If you're over 60 and you withdraw several thousand in cash, your bank is now required to verify that this isn't the result of a scam. They might call you, ask you what the money is for, and in some cases even try to convince you not to complete the transaction if they suspect fraud. Wire transfers, especially international ones, are also heavily scrutinized. If you're sending money overseas, be prepared for questions and possible delays. For green card holders, international transactions are particularly problematic. If you're sending money to family in your home country, which many immigrants do regularly, these transactions are now flagged for additional review. The bank needs to verify that you're not violating any sanctions or money laundering laws. Deposits of large amounts of cash can also trigger scrutiny. If you run a cash-based business, this could become a significant headache. Even though your business and deposits are completely legitimate, you may find yourself having to provide extensive documentation to explain where the money came from. Here's where things get really concerning. These regulations are being implemented unevenly across different banks and credit unions. Some financial institutions are being extremely aggressive in their compliance, flagging accounts and requesting documentation for relatively minor transactions. Others are taking a more measured approach. This inconsistency means that your experience might be very different depending on where you bank. Large national banks tend to have more sophisticated systems and can implement these regulations with some nuance. Smaller community banks and credit unions, while often providing more personal service, may not have the technological infrastructure to distinguish between genuinely suspicious activity and normal behavior by their customers. Let me give you some real examples of how this is playing out. Margaret is 72 and has banked with the same institution for over 40 years. She tried to withdraw $8,000 in cash to pay for new hearing aids that her insurance didn't fully cover. Her bank froze the transaction, called her in for an in-person meeting, and required her to sign multiple forms acknowledging that she understood the risks of carrying large amounts of cash. The whole process took 3 days, during which time the sale price on the hearing aids expired. Margaret wasn't doing anything wrong, but she was treated with suspicion because of her age and the amount she was withdrawing. Rajesh is a green card holder who's been in the United States for 12 years. He owns a small restaurant and regularly deposits cash from his daily receipts. Under the new regulations, his bank flagged his account for suspicious activity because of the frequent cash deposits. He had to provide extensive documentation, including his business license, tax returns for the past 3 years, and a detailed explanation of his business model. The investigation took 6 weeks, during which time his account was partially frozen. He couldn't access all his funds, which created serious cash flow problems for his business. Again, Rajesh wasn't doing anything illegal, but he got caught up in the broad net of these new regulations. Maria is 65 and a green card holder, so she's hit by both aspects of these regulations. She sends money to her elderly mother in the Philippines every month. This is something she's done for years without any problems. Now, every single transfer is flagged and delayed. The bank requires her to verify her identity, explain the purpose of the transfer, and provide documentation about her relationship to the recipient. What used to take 10 minutes online now requires phone calls, paperwork, and sometimes a visit to the branch. The delays mean her mother sometimes doesn't receive the money when she needs it for her medications. So, what can you do to protect yourself? First and foremost, you need to be proactive. Don't wait for your bank to contact you. If you're over 60 or a green card holder, reach out to your bank now and ask them about their implementation of the new 2026 regulations. Ask specifically what documentation they might need from you and provide it before they request it. This shows good faith and can help prevent your account from being flagged. For seniors, consider having a conversation with your bank about your normal financial patterns. If you regularly make large withdrawals or transfers, let them know in advance. Some banks will allow you to pre-authorize certain transactions or set up a pattern of expected behavior that won't trigger automatic flags. Keep detailed records of your transactions and be prepared to explain them if asked. If you're making a large purchase, keep receipts and documentation. If you're sending money to a family member, have a written record of your relationship and the purpose of the transfer. For green card holders, make sure all your documentation is current and easily accessible. Your green card should be valid and not expired. If your green card is expiring soon, start the renewal process now rather than waiting until the last minute. Keep copies of your green card, both physical and digital. Make sure your address is updated with USCIS and that it matches the address your bank has on file. Any discrepancies can trigger additional scrutiny. If you've moved recently, update your address with both your bank and immigration authorities immediately. Consider opening accounts at multiple financial institutions. This isn't about hiding money or evading regulations. It's about ensuring that if one bank freezes or restricts your account, you're not left completely without access to your funds. Having checking accounts at two different banks, for example, provides redundancy. If your primary account gets flagged and frozen, you still have access to money for your daily needs while you sort out the issue. Let's talk about documentation. For seniors, it's helpful to have a trusted family member or friend who can vouch for your transactions if needed. Some banks will accept a letter from an adult child or other relative explaining a financial transaction, especially if that person is also a customer of the bank. For green card holders, keep a file with all your immigration documents. Not just your green card, but also your approval notices, travel documents, and any correspondence with USCIS. If your bank asks for documentation, you want to be able to provide it immediately rather than having to search for it. Communication is crucial. If your bank contacts you about your account, respond immediately. Don't ignore letters, emails, or phone calls. Even if you think there's been a mistake, the longer you wait to respond, the more likely your account is to be restricted. When you do respond, be polite and cooperative. The bank employees are following regulations they're required to follow. Getting angry or defensive won't help your situation and might actually make things worse. For those of you who travel internationally, whether for work, family visits, or pleasure, let your bank know in advance. Many banks now have systems where you can notify them of travel plans through your online banking portal or mobile app. This prevents your legitimate transactions from being flagged as suspicious when you're using your card in another country. For green card holders specifically, if you're going to be out of the United States for an extended period, make sure you maintain access to your U.S. mail and your phone so you can respond to any bank inquiries. Let's address a concern that many green card holders have. Does this increased scrutiny affect your immigration status? The direct answer is no. These are banking regulations, not immigration regulations. Your bank reporting your transactions to federal authorities as part of anti-money laundering compliance doesn't impact your green card status. However, there's an indirect concern. If your bank closes your account due to non-compliance with verification requests, you might find it difficult to open accounts at other banks. This could create practical problems in maintaining your life in the United States, which could indirectly affect your ability to meet the residency requirements for green card maintenance or naturalization. Here's something that's often overlooked. These regulations also affect joint accounts. If you're over 60 and you have a joint account with your spouse who's under 60, the account might still be subject to enhanced scrutiny because one account holder is over 60. Similarly, if you're a U.S. citizen with a joint account with a green card holder, that account may be subject to the additional verification requirements for green card holders. Make sure all account holders are aware of these requirements and are prepared to provide documentation if needed. For those of you who are considering applying for citizenship, this is actually a good time to do so if you're eligible. Once you become a U.S. citizen, you're no longer subject to the enhanced scrutiny requirements for green card holders. The naturalization process takes time, typically 8 months to over a year. But if you meet the requirements, particularly the 5 years of permanent residence or 3 years if married to a U.S. citizen, consider starting the process now. Citizenship provides not just immigration security but also financial simplicity. Let's talk about digital banking and these new regulations. Many seniors are uncomfortable with online banking and prefer to do their banking in person or over the phone. However, the new regulations actually make it more important to have online access to your accounts. You need to be able to monitor your transactions in real time, so you can quickly spot if something has been flagged or frozen. You also need to be able to respond quickly to bank requests. And many banks now communicate primarily through secure messages in their online banking portals. If you're not comfortable with technology, ask a trusted family member to help you set up and monitor your online banking, or take advantage of classes that many banks offer to seniors on using digital banking tools. For green card holders, keeping your USCIS online account updated is equally important. Make sure you have access to your account, that your email address is current, and that you're monitoring for any notices. The new regulations require better coordination between financial institutions and immigration authorities. So, keeping both systems updated with the same information is crucial. Now let's address what happens if your account does get frozen or closed. First, don't panic. You have rights. Under federal law, your bank must notify you if they're taking action on your account and give you an opportunity to respond. If your account is frozen, contact the bank immediately to find out what documentation or information they need. Provide it as quickly as possible. If you believe the action is unjustified, you can file a complaint with the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. They have specific processes for handling complaints about unfair banking practices. If your account is closed, you have the right to receive your funds, though the bank may issue them by check rather than allowing electronic transfer. Opening a new account after a closure can be difficult because banks share information through systems like check systems. If one bank closes your account for regulatory reasons, other banks will see this when you apply. Be prepared to explain the situation and provide documentation showing that you weren't involved in any illegal activity. For seniors specifically, there are some banks and credit unions that specialize in serving older customers and have more nuanced approaches to these regulations. Look for institutions that explicitly market themselves to seniors and that have staff trained in elder financial issues. These institutions are more likely to distinguish between genuine fraud and normal senior banking behavior. For green card holders, consider credit unions that serve immigrant communities. These institutions often have staff who speak multiple languages and understand the unique challenges immigrants face. They may be more experienced in handling the documentation requirements and less likely to overreact to normal immigrant banking patterns like regular international transfers. Here's a practical tip that applies to everyone. Keep your contact information updated with your bank. Make sure they have your current phone number, email address, and mailing address. Many account restrictions happen because the bank tries to contact the customer for verification but can't reach them. If the bank can reach you quickly, issues can often be resolved before they escalate to account restrictions. Let's talk about the timeline for these regulations. While they're being referred to as 2026 regulations, the implementation is happening in phases throughout the year. Some banks started implementing enhanced procedures in January. Others won't fully comply until the end of the year. This means that even if you haven't experienced any changes yet, they could be coming. Don't assume that because your bank hasn't contacted you, you're not affected. Be proactive. Looking at the bigger picture, these regulations are part of a global trend toward greater financial transparency and regulation. The United States is coordinating with other countries to prevent money laundering and terrorism financing. While this is important work, the challenge is implementing these regulations without unduly burdening innocent people. Advocacy groups representing both seniors and immigrants are pushing back against the more aggressive implementations of these regulations, arguing that they're discriminatory and create unnecessary hardship. There may be modifications to these regulations as the year progresses based on feedback and complaints, but don't count on that. Protect yourself now with the regulations as they currently exist. For those of you who are business owners, whether you're over 60 or a green card holder or both, these regulations have additional implications. Business accounts are subject to even more scrutiny than personal accounts. Make sure your business records are impeccable. Keep detailed documentation of all income and expenses. Be prepared to provide tax returns, business licenses, and other documentation at any time. If you operate a cash-intensive business, consider transitioning to more electronic payments if possible. Not only does this create better records, it also reduces the scrutiny on cash deposits. Thank you so much for watching US Visa Info all the way through. I hope this comprehensive breakdown has given you a clear understanding of the new 2026 bank regulations and how they specifically impact people over 60 and green card holders. These changes are significant, but with proper preparation and knowledge, you can navigate them successfully. If you found this information valuable, please give us a thumbs up and subscribe to US Visa Info. We're dedicated to keeping you informed about every change in immigration policy, visa regulations, and life in the United States that affects you and your family. Share this video with friends, relatives, or anyone you know who might be impacted by these banking changes. Drop your questions, concerns, or personal experiences in the comments below. We read every comment and use your feedback to create content that addresses your real needs. Remember, knowledge is your best protection in navigating these complex regulations. Stay informed, stay proactive, and don't let these changes catch you off guard. Until next time, this is US Visa Info, your trusted guide to successfully navigating life in the United